Welcome to Ressa's Take. I'm so glad you're here. Each week, we will tackle some common challenges that we all often experience in life, and I'll share my take on the topic, along with some of my learnings from my own experiences. This is all about navigating life together and unlocking our best selves, one conversation at a time. Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Ressa. Thank you for tuning in today to Ressa's Take. I hope that you're having a great week and hopefully your weekend is off to a really good start. Before we get into the episode today, I just wanted to note that I know that over the last month or so, I haven't been consistently releasing new episodes every Friday like I did when I first started this podcast. But I wanted to explain that I'm just doing my best to make sure that I'm keeping a healthy balance with my day job, my personal life, and this podcast. And I'm trying to really practice what I preach here and making sure that I'm not overextending myself. So I want to make sure that I give this podcast the attention it deserves. And I also want to make sure I'm giving the other things that matter to me in my life the attention they deserve. So if there's ever a gap between episodes, I just want you to know that's why. So let's go ahead and dig in. For today's episode, I want to talk about authenticity, specifically being our authentic selves. This is sadly a hard thing for many of us to do. Saying be yourself sounds like, duh, well, who else am I going to be? But the reality is there's so much pressure and bias in the world that I really believe that sometimes we don't realize that at times we're trying to be something we aren't. We're changing how we talk, how we act, changing the things we like in order to gain the acceptance or approval of others, or maybe just to save ourselves from criticism or judgment. We don't like to admit that or believe that, but if you're honest with yourself, this is probably true for you in some capacity, even if maybe not anymore. I feel like at some point, many, if not all of us, have navigated the challenges of feeling like you're unsure if you can truly just be yourself. I wanted to talk about this today because I truly believe that each of us is unique and we all have something to bring to the world. And yes, that sounds lofty, but I really believe it's true. Suppressing your own authenticity to appease those around you or to get acceptance of those around you is a sacrifice. You're losing your ability to be who you are, say what you want, and do what you want to do. And the world loses the unique traits and perspectives that you could bring to it. So, what does it mean to be your authentic self? It's when your words, perspectives, and values match your actions, regardless of any pressure you may be under and regardless of any expectations that you feel are being set for you. And it may not be that it's always hard for you to be yourself. Sometimes it might depend on your setting or the people that you happen to be around. And maybe you even feel this way with people that you really should be able to be yourself around, but you just feel like you can't, like family, for example. And that can be tough because they're your family. You care about them. You likely don't want to argue. But sometimes, if we have strongly opinionated people in our families, it can be hard to feel comfortable sharing a different perspective, having different beliefs, or even different political views than them. And that last one can get real divisive. It certainly is a delicate balance. I recognize that. But it's important to remember that it's also not all on you. We each have a responsibility to be our authentic selves and to allow others to do the same. And if people aren't comfortable with you being authentically you, that's for them to change. It's not for you to shrink. Before we can even think about being our authentic selves, we need to know who we are. And that can be oddly hard to figure out. When I was growing up, it was hard to feel comfortable being myself. I had a really hard time fitting in. And because of that, I had a learned behavior of just suppressing my own thoughts or perspectives because I just didn't want to give people another thing to not like about me or to criticize me on. And I conformed more than I would like to admit because I just really wanted to fit in. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, it was real blurry for me because I got so used to doing what I thought others wanted me to do. I feel like I had a hard time figuring out what I actually wanted or who I was. So there I was, probably like 23 years old, sitting here like, who even am I? What do I actually like? What makes me happy? Developing your sense of self is so important, but it's not always easy to do, especially if you're used to going with the flow or grew up with self-esteem or identity issues like I did. I think a good place to start is to ask yourself some questions. What are your values? How do your values play a role in what you like and don't like in what you do or don't do. What's your personality like? What are things that you really like about yourself, even if others don't? For me, one of the challenges that I had when I was a teenager and even into my early 20s was when it came to friendships. If a friend came to me with a situation looking for advice, I would be honest with them. And in many instances, my honesty was, girl, you need to leave him alone. You can do better. Or I actually think you were wrong for reacting that way. And here's why. And more often than not, they weren't really looking for advice. They were looking for someone to just agree with them. But that's just not how I roll. I think honesty is so important. It's one of my core values. And I especially think real friends should be honest with one another. So it was so hard for me to just nod and agree when I really didn't. But now that I'm older, a little wiser, and realize that conforming has actually hurt me more than it's helped me, I realize that it's just best to stay true to my values. So the next time you ask me for advice, just know you're going to get an honest response. I can't just sit here and give my friend advice to get back with a guy that treats her like crap. And if my friend did something and they're in the wrong, I'm not just going to side with them because they're my friend. Now, I'll ride for them if the circumstances escalate, but we will have a conversation afterwards on how they were wildin'. But listen, I won't sit here and act like staying true to you is always easy. I just think it's really important to know how to get clear on who you are and who you want to be and consistently sense check that against what others are expecting from you. Because there will be times that those two things don't line up. When I was prepping for this episode, I read an article by Ariana Frenny on openup.com. She defines living an authentic life as knowing yourself, owning yourself, and being yourself. And I really like that. She describes knowing yourself as being aware of your personality, values, and needs, owning yourself as trusting yourself, your opinions, thoughts, choices, and behaviors, and being yourself as behaving in accordance with your personality, values, and needs, and not being influenced by the expectations of others. I really like that definition and wanted to share because it's really practical, and it gives us a good way to pulse check ourselves on whether we're truly being authentic or not. As we start to explore what it means to be our authentic selves, I think it's also important to identify the things that can often keep us from feeling comfortable being ourselves. There are a few common barriers to authenticity that I've heard. The fear of what others think of you is a big one. Sometimes it's as simple as a fear of rejection. Listen, you're not always going to be someone's cup of tea. Have you ever heard of the 25% rule? I just actually recently heard about this, but it basically says that out of 100% of people you know, 25% will not like you at first, but they will like you over time. 25% will like you at first and then won't like you over time. 25% will like you no matter what. And the last 25% will just never like you. I don't know how they got that data or if it's even accurate, but it was an interesting reflection for me. I tend to be a people pleaser, and I often have a really hard time when I don't feel accepted. So I don't like the thought of anyone disliking me, like ever. But this 25% rule, even if it's literally BS, it actually helps put things in perspective. There are some people that you're just never going to win over. So there's really no point in sacrificing your energy or your authenticity for them. Another reason I think it can be hard to be your authentic self is because of past experiences. Maybe you've tried being authentic and you were rejected or made fun of. Maybe you spoke your mind and you were ignored, overlooked, or dismissed. Those are really uncomfortable feelings, and I've been there. It's happened to me and it still happens to me, honestly. The big question you have to ask yourself is, if you stay quiet, if you conform, and don't stay true to you, what gets lost? Let me give an example from my own experience. Being a diverse individual in a group, room, workplace, whatever, where there's no one else or very few that look like you, stereotypes and bias can make being your authentic self feel really challenging at times. I remember earlier in my career being described as a spicy Latina, essentially because I would speak my mind. And also, I'm just naturally more of an emotional person. So if I'm upset, you're going to know. I'm always constructive. I believe people that know me would say that. I'm always constructive, but you'll know if I'm not feeling good about something. And the comment just annoyed me for so many reasons. Not only because, in the context in which it was said, it was clear they were basing it on a stereotype of Latin women, but also because I knew it wasn't the first or the last time that I was going to have to deal with that. But I'm not a stereotype. I'm a passionate person that's comfortable speaking her mind, having a healthy debate, and challenging the status quo. And I just happen to be half Puerto Rican. I struggled with shrinking my voice to not appear like the stereotypes that some people had clearly labeled me as. And sometimes I did. But as I continued to do the work to get clear on what makes me me, I realized that I'm no longer shrinking for anyone. If I were to keep doing that, the unique voice, perspective, and lived experiences that I had to share would have been lost. So whether they wanted to hear my voice or not, here I am, and you're going to hear it. Another random but maybe relatable example of needing to embrace my authentic self is I just had to accept that I'm an introvert living in an extroverted world. In my 20s, I remember really wanting to be the girl that was the fun one, the life of the party. And solely because I just loved people like that. I loved that they came with a ton of energy, could light up a room whenever you hung out with them. They could make anything that was boring fun. But I am not that girl, y'all. I love that girl, but I am not that girl. I'm a thinker, I'm an observer, I'm a listener, and I absolutely know how to have a good time. Like, don't get me wrong. Around my close friends, I can be very outgoing and I do think I'm fun, but my natural normal state is just to be happy and quiet. Like, I just like to mind my business. And navigating college and my career has taught me how to appear extroverted when it's necessary, but it's not my natural state. Trying to be the life of the party is exhausting. I literally do not know how extroverts do it, but I'm grateful for y'all. You add a little razzle dazzle, and I'm here for it. Shifting gears a bit, let's just get back on track. Something that I'm hearing a lot about lately is about building your personal brand. There's a Harvard Business Review article that walks through what it means to define your personal brand. The article states that your personal brand is different from your reputation because reputation is more about your credibility, where your personal brand is more about visibility and the values you outwardly represent. Your personal brand is how you want people to experience you. The article walks through the steps you can take to build your personal brand. And if you're interested in reading the article, it's called What's the Point of a Personal Brand by Harrison Monarth. I'm not going to dig into this topic today, but I wanted to touch on it because I feel like people often jump right to that part, creating a brand for themselves before they actually do the internal work to get to know themselves first. There's nothing wrong if you want to build your own brand for yourself, right? But I would just suggest that before you think about how you want to market yourself, make sure you take time to really get to know yourself. Unpack what makes you you. Personally, I feel that personal brands commoditize our uniqueness and our image. And I feel it shifts the focus from just being our authentic self to trying to convince others of who we are. But that's just my personal opinion. If I reflect a bit more on my own journey of authenticity, I mentioned earlier that because of my struggles with fear of rejection and people pleasing, over time it became hard for me to decipher between what was authentically me and what was me doing or saying what I felt others expected of me. To tackle this, I had to get clear on what my values were, the role I wanted them to play in my life, what my true personality was like, what I like and don't like, how I want to show up for others, basically all the questions that I mentioned earlier in this episode. And through that exercise, my values became really clear. Things like honesty, integrity, fairness, compassion, family, so on. This really helped me determine how I needed to show up, what I needed to say, what I needed to walk away from in some situations if my values were compromised, as an example. I hope that some of the examples I've shared so far in this episode have been helpful. The main thing here is that this is all about being intentional to stay true to you. This means being mindful as situations arise, reflecting on your values and what's important to you, and staying true to that. I've been working with a professional coach lately, and one of the development goals that she's helping me with is finding my identity and my purpose outside of work. I know that probably sounds really pathetic as you hear me say that out loud, but it's real. If you haven't been able to tell from the last few episodes, I'm really working on my work life balance. I've spent a lot of time prioritizing my professional life in my life so far, and I've lost sight of what else matters to me outside of that. Like, of course, my friends, family, boyfriend, my dog. I mean, like, yes, those have always mattered to me. But what I'm talking about here is I've lost sight of like, what do I like to do? How do I answer the question, who am I, without talking about what I do for work? So, as a part of my development goal that this coach, she and I are working on, she suggested I read Simon Sinek's book, Find Your Why. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. One of the main aspects of the book is learning how to craft your why statement. It's a statement that outlines what you see as your contribution and impact on the world. So here's a high level overview of how it works. You identify someone that's going to help you with this exercise. They're going to be your partner. Then, ahead of the session with them, you need to think about specific experiences throughout your life that made a big impact on you and shaped you into who you are today. And these could be good experiences or bad experiences. And then the person that you identified as your partner is tasked with asking you probing questions as you talk about these experiences to help you get insight into how those experiences made you feel and identify themes through all of the experiences that you talk through. Those themes that they find are what help you craft your why statement. The premise of this is that it's reflecting on stories from your past and getting clear on why they were so important to shaping who you are can help you uncover your why as a person. I did zero justice to explaining how that works, so please read the book or look it up to better understand. After going through that exercise, I crafted my why statement, which is to inspire others to be courageous and achieve what they never thought possible so that they can leave a lasting impact on everything around them. This statement is something that clearly articulates some of my deepest values and the change I believe that I can make on the world. It's also even a great way to just pressure test how I think about my career and the type of work that I'm energized by. I share this with you because for me, going through this exercise was a good step in my journey with authenticity. Before we wrap up, let's talk through some recipes for discovering our authentic selves. The first is to get clear on who you are and who you want to be. I talked through my own journey with this, which I'm still on. But if you're anything like me, needing to unpack the layers of people pleasing, fear of rejection, and conformed behaviors can take time and effort to get to the heart of who you are. But the work is worth it. Think about what matters most to you. What do you value? What are the principles that you would stand on business for? What's your personality like? Introvert, extrovert, it doesn't matter. If you're introverted, sit and be quiet all you want. Stick to your small group of friends. Enjoy that time alone to recharge. There is nothing wrong with that. And if you're extroverted, be talkative. It's okay if you're loud. It's okay if you have a lot of energy. The world needs all of that. And as I mentioned earlier, as an introvert, I need all of that. Please do not count on me to carry a conversation. I need you. We all do. And if you have what you consider quirks or unique likes or interests, do you, boo? Whatever it is, take the time to figure it out and let the world enjoy every bit of what you have to offer. And even if they don't all enjoy it, that's on them, not you. Just be you. Next, do a personal audit of your life. When you reflect on who you are and what it takes to feel like you can truly be yourself, are the environments you put yourself in and the people you spend time with enabling you to do that? Do you have friends or loved ones in your life that are constantly trying to make you be something that you aren't? Do they try to dim your light? Do they ignore your interests because they're just not into it and they expect you to do whatever they want? Do they criticize your perspective or your personality? Are you working somewhere or involved in groups or organizations where you feel like you have to be less of you to fit in? Whatever the case may be, take a thoughtful audit of your life and make note of where and with whom you feel like you can truly be yourself and where you can't. Then, after you've done that audit, identify the changes that you need to make. This could be how you choose to show up moving forward. It could be the boundaries that you need to create to allow yourself to truly be you, or the tough decisions you may need to make about what relationships or environments you need to cut out of your life because they're keeping you from being authentically you. This is hard to do. And I would suggest before you cut anyone off, have a conversation first. Be transparent about how you're feeling and what you need from them. Open and honest dialogue is so important. Give them an opportunity to respond and even ask them what they need from you to help them feel more comfortable being themselves. Then, if they're unwilling to support you, you have a choice to make. Continue to adapt to what they want as you have been, or create some boundaries to protect your peace. Last, intentionally hold yourself accountable. This is often hard to do, especially if you're used to adapting to what others expect of you and have challenges with feeling like you can't truly be yourself. But the next time you stop yourself from speaking up or adapt what your interests are based on those around you, or shift what you're going to do because of what you think others want you to do, think about this time that you reflected on who you are and who you want to be. Incremental changes to shift towards being more authentically you can make a world of difference over time. That's all I have for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Just remember that we each have something that we bring to this world, and not everyone will like it or you, and that's their problem, not yours. Embrace who you are. You're special and you're worth it. I look forward to chatting with you all again next time. I hope you have a great weekend. God bless. And that's a wrap. Another candid chat among friends. If today's episode resonated with you, hit that follow button, share the episode with your friends, and leave a review. I would love to hear what resonated most and love to hear any of the thoughts that you have on the episode. Hope to see you soon, and don't forget to drop your questions or insights on our Instagram at Ressa's Take.